Hey everyone, Fluff here. So yesterday I was streaming and we were playing this terrible Elementals Field of the Dead deck. It wasn't very good, but in our third round I think it was, we came up against a player on MTGO named RuneSkilled, and they were running a list very similar to this one. It's a sort of Twiddle Storm style deck, and they just absolutely trounced us. So we were absolutely enamored with this deck. We decided to brew it based on what we'd seen from them, because I couldn't find a list that looks anything like this anywhere else on the internet. And then we hopped into a league and 5-0'd that league the first time playing the deck. So pretty insane, very powerful. And as I say, I couldn't find anything else like this, so I'm bringing you, as far as I'm concerned, a world exclusive deck tech for Permanent Twiddle Storm in Pioneer, as I like to call it. So it's called Twiddle Storm. There's a card called Twiddle that allows you to untap a permanent, and this deck basically runs a lot of versions of that. Twiddle's not actually Pioneer legal, so we have to make do with things like Vizier of the Tumbling Sands and Voyaging Satyr. And the idea is we want that to untap our Lotus Field, which is going to tap for 3 mana per time, and that's going to be super sweet for us. And the reason it's Permanent Twiddle Storm is because I have seen a Pioneer list running around that does a similar kind of thing to this, but uses mostly non-creature spells, like Hidden Strings, for example, to untap Lotus Field, and then tends to win with a really big expansion explosion. But this version of the deck runs a ton of permanents that untap. So you got Kiora's Follower, Voyaging Satyr, Kiora Behemoth Beckoner, Kiora Master of Depths, as well as the Pore Over the Pages, which is commonly ran in the non-creature ones, and Vizier of Tumbling Sands, which of course is a creature, but you tend to use it for its cycling effect, so it kind of almost counts as a non-creature spell. And again, as I said, the idea is untap your Lotus Field, an absolute bunch, play really big threats, Hydroid Krasis, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, even a couple of Walking Ballista and an Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, and really just go to town on your opponent. So that might be all that you need to hear about the deck, and if that's the case, I would recommend going out watching that stream VOD that I was talking about, which will be uploaded at the same time as this video. You can see us 5-0. I'd really recommend that you do that because the deck can be tricky to play. There are some complex lines. That said, I did manage to pick it up on my first try and 5-0, so maybe it's not that complicated, who knows. Either way, you might want to go out and buy it right now. You might want to go and watch that VOD. I'm going to do a little bit more of an in-depth deck tech right now, and if you want to stick along, find out a little bit more about the deck, you're completely welcome to. Okay, so we can break the cards in this deck down into 4 basic categories. You've got your Lotus Field Finders, you've got your Lotus Field Untappers, you've got the threats that you're going to cast with all that Lotus Field mana, and you've also got some other lands in there, some utility lands, some lands that tap for green and blue, because that's the colours of the deck. So I expect that you're familiar with the threats. You're probably familiar with the finders as well. It's Once Upon a Time and Sylvan Scrying. Sylvan Scrying finds you any land. Once Upon a Time digs 5 deep and can find you a land or a creature. But what you're probably not so familiar with is the untappers. So Kiora's Follower and Voyaging Satyr are both 2 mana permanents, creatures that untap target land when they tap. They both have 2 toughness. The 2 power on Kiora's Follower almost never comes up, but I imagine it will once in a blue moon. So because they have such low toughness, they are very easy for our opponents to remove. These can be pushed, they can be wild slashed. Basically any form of removal is going to hit these. But basically what this does is it means either our opponent is spending mana on removing our creatures, so they're being reactive, they're not being proactive, they're not hitting us in the face, that's going to give us more time, or they don't have the removal and we punish them really hard by making a ton of mana. So that's pretty good. Vizier of Tumbling Sands pulls double duty. For 3 mana it can be like Voyaging Satyr or Kiora's Follower, or for 1 and a blue you can cycle it to untap target permanent and draw a card. The cycling is really great because it's almost impossible for opponents to interact with that. Not many people are going to be countering activated abilities, and you know, it can't get negated or anything like that, so that's really sweet. And then we've got our Planeswalker untappers. We've got Kiora Master of the Depths and Kiora Behemoth Beckoner. Now both of these can untap our Lotus Field. Kiora Behemoth Beckoner does it as a -1, Kiora Master of Depths does it as a +1, but what is really different about them is that the Kiora Master of the Depths, the +1 also untaps a creature. So not only is it a field untapper, it's a field untapper. This means that if you've got a Lotus Field out and you've got a Voyaging Satyr out and you use Kiora Master of the Depths as +1, you actually get 6 mana from that, which is pretty insane, and does make Kiora Master of the Depths free to play if you've got a Lotus Field and Voyaging Satyr out. And Kiora Behemoth Beckoner is free to play if you've only just got the Lotus Field out. Kiora, Master of the Depths' -2 ability can pull more lands and creatures into our hand, which is really good if we start running out of gas. Whereas Kiora Behemoth Beckoner's static ability, you get to draw a card if a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield, comes up rarely, or is relevant rarely. I mean, it does come up because you tend to win the game when you cast Ulamog. But every now and again, your Hydroid Cracer, so your Walking Blister, is going to draw you an extra card, and that's just pretty neat. And last but not least for our untappers is Pore Over the Pages, an uncommon from the Shadows over Innistrad block. You might not have seen the card before, but it's 3 blue and blue, draw 3 cards, untap up to 2 lands, then discard a card. So if we have Lotus Field out and one other land, Pore Over the Pages is effectively a 1-mana sift, draw 3 cards and discard a card. Or if you have 2 Lotus Fields out, more often you're going to have a Lotus Field and a Thespian Stage pretending to be a Lotus Field, then Pore Over the Pages actually nets you a mana, gains you a mana, draws you 3 cards, and then you discard a card. That's really good. It's going to find you a ton of gas. It's one of the best cards in the deck. I imagine you're familiar with most of the other threats. Hydroid Crasis, it's a really good thing to pump a lot of mana into. Same with Walking Blister, same with Ulamog, same with Ugin the Spirit Dragon. These cards just tend to win the game when they come down. Walking Blister and Hydroid Crasis are obviously a little bit more flexible. You can cast these earlier if you're not, if you need to catch up a little bit, if you're not producing too much mana, so they do have that flexibility, which is pretty nice. They can just be chump blockers or just ping things down. That is great. Then in terms of utility lands, most of our lands just tap for green or blue, or we've got Thespian Stage, which is kind of Lotus Field copies 5 through 7. It copies the Lotus Field, and basically if Thespian Stage copies a Lotus Field, you spend 2 mana and your land drop to get a Lotus Field, which ramps you for 3. So you spent 3 mana to ramp you for 2, which is like an Hour of Promise that only costs 3 mana and can be found through Sylvan Scrying. So that's very, very good. We've also got Sanctum of Ugin. This means if we cast a really big Walking Blister, we can find the Ulamog, or if we cast Ugin, we can find the Ulamog. Sometimes that comes up just to give you a little bit more power to close out the game. So that's most of the deck. Let's talk a little bit about the sideboard. The sideboard options I wasn't really sure about, so as I said, we had to piece together this list from what we saw against our opponent, and the only sideboard cards we saw from them were Anger of the Gods and Bontu's Last Reckoning. Both of these cards are really sweet. Because we have access to 3 mana of any colour from Lotus Field, we can cast both of these very reliably on turn 3 or thereabouts, turn 4 sometimes, and they're going to give us a lot more time. When we Bontu's Last Reckoning, it's actually only 1 land usually that won't untap, the Lotus Field, and if we have an untapper on the board like Kiora Behemoth Beckoner, that's not even going to slow us down that much. Anger of the Gods is great against mono black aggro in particular, as well as some other aggro decks, but against mono black it's really good because it exiles their creatures, and usually mono black has a very recursive graveyard strategy, so that's going to shut that down. But as I say, it's good against aggro just in general. Gives you a ton more time that you can piece together your combos. As I said, those were the only 2 sideboard cards we saw, so we kind of had to guess at what might be good for the other 2 slots, or the rest of the slots I should say. So we put in 4 copies of Unravel the Aether and 3 copies of Negate. Now Negate actually put in some serious work during the stream. It's really good against Field of the Dead decks because it counters their Hour of Promise. 2 mana, it countered pretty much the best spell in their deck. Stop their zombies, give us a lot more time is really good. Unravel the Aether never came up. We didn't play against any Ensoul Artifact or any decks really that relied on artifacts or enchantments that much, so we never really felt the need to bring this in. There might be better choices out there, but I still do think that if we played against those decks, Unravel the Aether would have been pretty sweet to bring in. That said, there's probably much better choices. The sideboard I am the least sure about. The main board I think is pretty solid. There could be 1 or 2 cuts here or there. I think 4 Sylvan Scrying might be a little bit too much. But what do I know? So that's all I've got on this deck for you today in this video, but as I said, there is that stream VOD out there, so you can go out and watch us completely 5-0 demolish a league, or you can maybe catch us live on twitch.tv/foyfluff. I'm sure we'll be playing this deck again, would even run it through a PTQ or something like that, so perhaps look out for that. And if you enjoyed this video, please do comment letting me know Let me know if you like the deck tech, let me know if you like the format. I'm always trying to figure out the best way of doing these things. Like the video if you did like it, and of course consider subscribing if you'd like to see more Pioneer in particular content, because that's what I'm doing a lot of these days. Thank you so much for watching, have a great day, and keep on being cool, because you are, I promise.